Happy Saturday.
Saturday again.
Once again, and just so you know, Saturday happens every 7 days. I thought Tuesday was Saturday this week, and I woke up freaking out because I'm like, what am I going to talk about today on Clutch Radio? And then I was upset because, boy, it seems like it was only like 3 days ago that we did a show.
It comes up fast.
It does. It does come up fast, and I am glad that we are here, and we are ready to rock and roll. So shall we start the show?
Let's do it.
Here we go.
It's time to start your engines and be part of the conversation. You can always ask the experts, Raffi and Dan Rosenberg, because it's now time for Clutch Radio. The show starts now.
Oh, now. Okay.
The conversation. You know, if we ever decide that we want to do a show on knives, we can use the same conversation.
Right. That'll be carving. Yeah, that's good. So welcome to Clutch Radio. I'm Dan Rosenberg. That's Raffi Manassian on that side. We get together every Saturday live here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and we talk about cars. Buying, selling, trading, leasing, collecting, whatever. And today's opening topic,
here we go,
is, yes, this is something people have been talking about lately in the news because of Bitcoin and Dogecoin and all these different coins.
Yes.
Is what's the best way to pay for a car?
Ah, very nice.
And there are a lot of, there are dealerships that will accept Bitcoin for payment. I don't know that that's a good investment because you're taking something that could go up or down and buying something that's definitely going to go down in most cases. And a lot of people want to know, should I finance? Should I tell the dealer I'm paying cash so they give me a better deal? That's very old school. The dealers really would rather have you pay by financing, because if you use their financing, they're making a little bit of money on it.
Absolutely. And nothing wrong with making a little money.
Absolutely. But you can get a better interest rate if you shop it yourself and go to your bank yourself. It's a little more hassle, but you can do that. And people ask me, and I have friends, I'm sure you get the same thing. I'll get a text or an email or a phone call. Hey, I'm about to buy a car.
Yep.
I can get 3.9% from my credit union, but the dealership's offering me 4.9. Is it worth that extra 1%? What should I do? It really depends on the car. Sometimes 0% is available.
Yep.
And when 0% is available, that's usually a good way to go. If you buy, it's usually only on new cars, obviously. That's usually a good way to go because it's free money. If you're going to buy a new car and they offer 0% and you qualify, which is typically like a 720, 740 credit score or better to get the 0%. Take the same, if you have the money to pay cash, put that in an account and make all your payments out of that account, and you'll earn interest instead of paying interest.
That's the absolute right answer. The easiest thing to do is if you have $20,000 in a bank account and you're looking at let's just say for discussion's sake, a $25,000 car, then you want to buy it on 0% and then have your car payment made automatically, directly pulling from that account. And within the time that you spend paying for it, you'll earn a nominal interest. Interest rates now with the bank aren't very high, but it gets your payment being regular and you don't have to worry about it. You get to enjoy the fun of a brand new car, but also it gives you 2 years to build up the remaining $5,000 that is still required to be there. And that's only a couple $100 a month to get to the offset. And you're much better off paying yourself at 0% than you are paying the dealer with dealer financing at 3.9, 4.9. And now, granted, these numbers are very low and the interest you pay is going to be very low. But if you have the cash and want to put that cash to work for you, which is a good idea from an investment perspective, that's the way to go.
Yeah, and I know I've told this story before about Corvettes. When I was selling cars in California, right after 9/11, General Motors went 0% for 72 months on everything.
Yeah.
And we're like, they're not going to do it on Corvettes. They never do anything like that for Corvettes. They did. And a guy came in, around October, about a month after 9/11, and he had been saving up. He had retired. He had $58,000. He was about to buy a Corvette. And I said, listen, you can get 0% for 6 years. Take that 58,000. And back then, ING Direct had their orange checking account that paid 4% interest rate.
Which is,
Yeah. So take that money, put it in the bank, and just pay your payment out of that for the next 6 years. At the end of 6 years, you can have money left over.
Right.
And I said, since you're retiring anyway, why just blow all this cash? Let it work for you, which he did. And I think we figured out it was like $1,500 he would have ended up with at the end of 6 years.
Yeah. And
that's not too bad.
Here's the other part of that equation is that doing that means that, let's just say after 2 years of having owned that car, you decide you're tired of it and you no longer want to keep it. You go ahead and sell it, and you don't have to pay anybody off. You just sell the car, and the money is there in your bank account to pay the residual. It's done. So many people, they buy on time and they have the worry of paying this and it's so much cleaner to be in control of your nest egg for as long as you can on the purchase. And that's really the bottom line. People used to go to car dealers and they get that bottom line figure and get to all the calculation, and then they pull back from the chair and they go, okay, now what can you do if I pay you cash? Well, that leverage just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the dealer makes more money by selling their finance program to you, sometimes 2.5% on the money. And that backroom finance value to them is just as good, sometimes not even better than buying the extra undercoating and the double thick floor mats and the all the things that they like to sell you at the very end, including the premium service package, which includes washing your car every time you get an oil change. Those extras still don't amount to getting 2.5% in their back pocket year after year after year.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not a negotiation ploy anymore. Now, Ray in the comments mentions don't ever pay off anything with 3% or less interest, especially your home. It's free money. With current mortgage interest deduction still in full effect, you'd have to be brain dead to pay it off. Asia has 99-year mortgages.
Yes. And Switzerland has 100-year mortgages on the homes because they realize that most people are transferring their assets from family members to family members, and the value of property there is so high that the only way to amortize it to where people can live on a living wage with their homes is to do it with a 100-year mortgage. Why the United States hasn't converted to 100-year mortgages is a mystery to me, because one of our housing problems is because the cost of even a basic home is just too expensive for most people on a living wage to afford. So welcome to houses and cars.
Welcome to the house-versation. But yeah, so, the other thing to look at is if you can take out, if you have a home equity line of credit that you're paying 3% for, 2.5% for, maybe write the check for the car that way. You can even negotiate with the dealer, let them get their financing, and then pay it off the first time you get your first bill.
Absolutely.
Pay the whole thing off.
Yeah,
then you pay zero interest to the bank, and you're paying off the other way. And then negotiation wise, the dealer may have lost money on the actual car, because let's say they're making $3,000 in finance revenue, and they decide, you know what, I'll lose $1,000 on the car, because we're making the $3,000. They look at the bottom line number, and then you just paid it off that quick. They don't get that money actually. They make it only over time. It's like a reserve, unless they have a flat. That's a whole other thing to describe. But it really depends on the car. Now, you never want to take a depreciating asset and pay interest on it. It just doesn't really make sense if you can avoid that. Same as with like sales tax. If you're paying 10% sales tax and you do zero down to buy a car, you're now paying interest on that 10% sales tax.
Yes.
Because that's the total amount that you're financing. So don't do zero down. Even if you qualify for it, at least pay the tax and registration as your down payment. Pay that much at least, because the last thing you want to do is 6 years down the road, you're still paying interest on
Yeah.
sales tax,
Yeah.
which makes no sense.
And that's great advice. Always pay something. And oftentimes what I tell people is I say, go look at the brand new car that you want. Get the price, get the everything, get all the information on that brand new car. And if it comes up to be $41,600, now go look at a 2-year-old car, pre-owned, lower miles, and get the exact same car that's 2 years older and look at the dollar value at $30,000 and save that $10,000 and take that $10,000 and have that be your down payment so that your overall payment is going to be lower. The technology in new cars, the reliability and durability is so good that a 2-year-old car, for all intents and purposes, it's just warmed up for you. And you don't need to pay for that depreciation. And the other thing that I want to make, the other point that I want to make, and this is something I remember from years ago, I can't remember who told this to me. They said, look, there is no money in the world. There is your money and my money. Those are the monies. There's never any abstract money. It's either your money or somebody else's. So whenever you're dealing with your money, you do the best you can to protect it, because the minute the deal is done, your money is no longer your money. It's somebody else's. So all you're doing is administrating it when you have payments or you do it right on a monthly basis. Your job is to protect as much of that asset as possible. And that kind of thinking helps buying pretty much anything. And that's why I always recommend for people that are looking at buying a brand new car, think about how you want to spend your money and think of it as your money, because you'll be paying for that asset for quite some time.
Yeah, and I think that it also goes at, when negotiation, I get people all the time, what somebody asked me what's the most I should pay, or what's the most I'm willing to pay, or what's my best offer?
Yeah.
Well, your best offer is the most you'll pay, and their best offer is the least they'll sell it for, right? I mean, we've said that probably 100 times on the show. That's the market value. If I'm selling something, if I'm selling this pen to me might be it's $100. Well, you're only willing to pay $1. All right. Well, somewhere between $1 and $100 is the actual cash value of this pen. We have to negotiate to get to it. That's how you determine the real value of a car, is what people are willing to pay for it. And Ray also points out in the comments, cash is trash and hard assets are appreciating rapidly. But of course, times will change. Now, classic cars is a whole other story, because you could buy a car today, maybe put a couple $100 into it, a couple $1,000 into it, that's a classic, and sell it 6 months from now and make a very nice profit. In that case,
this is absolutely.
In that case, if you finance at 3 or 4%, and there are companies that will finance classic cars, that might not be a horrible idea, especially if it's going to go up 10 or 15%.
Right. Now, if you're looking at doing a classic car and you're going to finance your classic car, I don't recommend using classic car financing, because the interest rate tends to be higher, and there's some challenges managing that peak interest rate in your collectible, unless you know that you're getting a phenomenal deal. Unless you're aware of anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000 of upside in your classic car that you happen to purchase, you're not going to be able to recover enough profit to have it be worth your while once you include the tax, the license, the insurance costs, the storage if you don't have a place to keep it, et cetera, et cetera. So what's important to keep in mind is how you want to manage the asset based on your projection of its value. There are you could go out and buy a 66 Mustang Coupe that you're getting from a local family that has had it for years, and it's in good original condition. It just needs to be mechanically freshened, and you might be able to get that car for $3,000. And once it's all said and done with your sweat equity in it, you can probably sell it for $10,000. Well, there's $7,000 in upside. But if you study what the real numbers are, you're going to have costs, tax, license, storage, and everything, all that put together, there's only going to be $4,000 upside. So you want to be careful to make sure that $3,000 you start with and the money you put into it is in your control, and you put limits on how you're going to spend it. Because what happens oftentimes with cars like that is people will put $10,000 into a $10,000 car, go to sell it, let it go for $8,500, and wonder why they did it at all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see that a lot with classic cars. Somebody says, well, what's this car worth fully restored? 15 grand. All right. What's it cost you 30 to restore it to get your 15
Yep.
grand?
Yeah.
So, but then again, 30 years from now, that car might be worth 200 grand. I mean, there's no way to know.
Absolutely. And there are some ways to know for sure, with a reasonable level of certainty, which cars are going to continue to go up in value. But I always tell people to buy a classic car or a collector car or vintage car. Number one, buy what you love. That's the most important factor in buying a classic car, because if you don't love that car, it's going to bother you that it is finicky starting, it's noisy, it smells like gas fumes sometimes until it's warmed up. It's not the most comfortable car, but you still enjoy. You've got to love that car to accept some of its challenges in ownership. That's the first thing. The second thing is, don't buy on projected worth, buy on current worth. So if you're buying a $25,000 car, don't think to yourself, this is going to be a $35,000 car a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever. No, always think of it as a $25,000 car. And if it happens to go up in value, that's okay. If it happens to go down in value, that's also okay, because you're getting some joy and use and happiness out of it while it either goes up or down. Now, there are many cars that can surprise you in their value swing in the classic car world. And those cars have typically been hard to pinpoint because the demographics have been changing around collector cars. There's such a thing as a $150,000 Subaru now.
Wow.
And while that might be shocking to some people, for many people who've been watching for quite some time, they bought those $150,000 Subarus for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 and waited. So these things are possible. And throughout the entire spectrum of car collectibles, what has happened is in the 80s and 90s, there was a tighter, smaller market of collectible cars. Now that we're in the 2020s, now it's gotten larger. So the supply of collectible cars has gotten bigger. And the supply getting bigger, the other thing that has happened is that the buyer community has also gotten bigger. Now that's going to change in about 5 to 10 years as older people who have been committed collectors start to die off or stop buying cars. And the amount of young people coming in to replace that interest, that's not going to replace the number of people, but what is going to happen is those people that are replacing the younger people are going to be willing to pay higher prices for cars that are hard to get. Right. So many cars are going to be very, very valuable, and an enormous amount of cars are going to be very buyable. 25 years ago, you could get a 57 Chevy, nicely restored, for $25,000. Today, you can get a 57 Chevy 25 years later for $25,000. So same thing with a lot of Mustangs and Camaros and a lot of cars from the 50s and 60s that are great for $25,000, but they're not investments. Unless you're looking for a place to put $25,000 just to hold it as a solid asset, super. You can do that with a 57 Chevy and probably never sell it for $12,500, so you're not going to lose 50%. But if you're looking for a higher yield investment in a collectible car, generally speaking, you're going to want to buy further into the youth buying segment of the collectible cycle.
Yeah. And this goes to buying cars from, brand new all the way back to super old. I mean, the point you made about the supply growing, you don't really think about that. Like I think of in my head, classic cars have been the same since I was, a teenager.
Right.
But back then it was 50s and 60s.
Sure.
And now you're right, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even some 90s cars are now, because they're over 20 years old. So now you're getting collectible plates, or is it 30 years old? 1990. Yeah. Wow. 1990 is 30. 1991 is 31 years ago, or 30 years ago. Holy crap.
Years. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, you want to talk about anything about buying or selling or trading or leasing, or you have a credit question, you can put it in the comments and we will do our best to answer. Adam does mention he's currently driving a 2021 4Runner as a rental this weekend. which is nice, but awful fuel economy. Yes, 4Runners are not known for their fuel economy.
Yeah, and typically big vehicles, trucks, SUVs, the conversation I like to have with many people who are looking at getting full-size SUVs is consider that these vehicles, for the amount of work that they're going to do for you in the SUV category, they are not worth the cost of additional fuel. Most SUVs are driving around largely empty. And the inside of an SUV has only so much usable storage space. A station wagon, for example, a Volvo wagon has almost as much cubic volume of usable space as a Volvo SUV. But you're going to get better fuel economy with a Volvo wagon and not compromise that much. You can get giant, ladders, full-size ladders into the back of most station wagons. Pretty much family vacation stuff, luggage in the back, kids in the back seat, dog coming along. That's a station wagon. So if you're going to need an SUV to go visit grandma and bring 3 kids with you and lots of extra stuff, that's when you rent your SUV. And you factor that into the cost of going to see grandma twice a year. And you do not have to have that SUV back and forth commuting, using up a lot of fuel. In the future, SUVs will embrace electric, and you'll save a little bit in that regard. But generally speaking, the offset costs first, the increased expense of buying a premium SUV, and then the fact that you're paying more for fuel, sometimes it's just not going to be worth it for you.
Yeah. Jake does point out in the comments that $25,000 20 years ago is worth a lot more than $25,000 today. So technically you lost on the 57 Chevy. But that is true. But what Raffi's saying is if you take 25 grand and hide it under your mattress, it's the same as 25 grand in a nice car you can drive around.
Absolutely. And
either way, you're not losing money.
And Jake makes a good point, because spending 25 grand 25 years ago and spending it today, the value of it from an investment structure is completely different. I have conversations with people who've been very successful selling classic cars, and they're proud to say they bought this car for $1 million in 2001, and they just sold it for 4.2 million. That's 20 years later. So look at the increase in value. And a good argument could be to say, if you'd taken that $1 million and just bought Apple, Cisco, Microsoft, Amazon,
Dogecoin,
you'd have an awful lot more than $3.1 million in profit. Okay. But along the way, for that 20 years, you got the experience of owning something that is visceral. You can get in it, you can drive it, you can enjoy it, you can take it to places where people gather with like-minded interest, and you can enjoy the conversation around that artifact. You can't necessarily do that with stock, although you can play with an Apple computer and talk to people in the Apple community, but most of it is going to be focused on the tech and not the investment value. And that's the big plus of having a classic car that people look at and admire and talk about and share some of their memories and things like that, regardless of the value that is increasing financially.
Yeah. And Dan in the comments, not me, I'm not talking the third person, says being able to do your own work on classics makes a big difference in what you have to hire out, like mechanical, upholstery, body, and paint. That's very true. I mean, on a car that's newer, you're definitely not going to be able to do a lot of work yourself. You can maybe change the oil, maybe change the brakes, maybe. But other than that, you need computers, you need all kinds of equipment. There's stuff that's not available to anybody except for the dealer for, sometimes a 20 and a 19 car. So work on classics. It is more fun to turn a wrench, as they say.
Yeah, Dan L is absolutely right. It's a great way if you have skills and you have tools. It's a great way to spend your weekends. If you have young kids that you want to encourage their interest in something other than Minecraft, you can get them out to the garage and give them small tasks to do. Take the carburetor off the car and tell them to put it in the parts bin and clean it with a brush, and have them wear gloves so their hands aren't getting toxins, and put on a protective breathing mask. And
we all have those now.
Yeah, we do. And and get your kid involved in it. It's a fun thing to do. I did it with my dad when I was a kid. I used to go out in the garage. Whenever I saw him open that garage door, I ran out there to see what was happening. And it's a great way to learn, because those skills can help and benefit you through all sorts of situations. Just the other day, a neighbor mine called and said that the person that had been there at their place helping them couldn't get their car started. And they knew I was a car guy, and they said, could you come down and give us a hand? And I loaded up the 3 things that I know I always need to get a car started. And that's car starter fluid, my portable charger battery booster, and a little bag of quick fix-it tools. The prominent aspect inside there being the ever-present duct tape. And
Duct tape and vice grips.
yes, and down I went, and within about 45 minutes, we got the car started. So it's a skill that you can cultivate, and if you have the interest and you want to work on your own car, as Dan said, look, and he says he was doing brakes on the family car at age 12. Well, Dan, you might be an exception, because
Not me. The Dan in the comments.
Yeah.
Dan L.
Dan L, you might be an exception, because I'm guessing you have some mechanical propensity and skill. Brakes, the one thing I do tell people is that brakes and fuel, if you're not particularly skilled mechanically, those are 2 things. They're critical, mission critical systems on an automobile. You want to be sure to have a professional do those things, unless you're really good at it. Now, Dan L could be good at it. I suspect he is, having brake jobs at age 12. So the other things that you can look at is the cost of doing those other items. Like an oil change is a simple procedure, but it can take some time. You may be better off having it done for 30, 40, 50 bucks. Painting your car. I've painted many cars in makeshift booths made out in the second bay of the garage. It can be done, and you do save a lot of money, no doubt. But when it's all said and done, if the difference is $1,500 to $2,000, and you're going to make that up in your profit on the car, sometimes you're better off doing that on your own. Upholstery work used to be very difficult to do, because you had to do the stitch work, the detailing, and all that. Now you can reupholster a Mustang in a matter of hours, because the kit comes to you. Everything you need, all the skins and the seat to get. All you need to do is unbolt the seats, take off the old, and put on the new. And it's just a matter of pulling the hog clips nice and tight around the bottom of the seat to hold it in position. There are YouTube videos that explain how to do all that stuff, and nobody gets hurt when you replace an interior. And the carpet, beautiful to replace the carpet and get everything out of that. And this is something kids love, because you'll find pennies, you'll find all kinds of mystery stuff under there, and the car looks beautiful when it's done, and they'll feel proud of that too.
Yeah, and doing interior work is definitely the least screw upable, as I like to call it, because if the worst you can do is make it as bad as it is in most cases.
Yeah, the interior work, seats, recovering seats, front and rear seats, carpet is very easy now, because you don't have to cut anything. It comes pre-cut, pre-fit, ready to go. Take out the old carpet, vacuum out the stuff, take some rust inhibitor and paint on to the floor. If your insulation pad, if you want to improve that a little bit, improve sound insulation, put in another layer of insulation there. Buy a new set of rocker panel carpet strips for the door thresholds. It'll brighten up the interior beautifully. You can change out the carpet in a Mustang, a Camaro, a 57 Chevy. That's a day's job if you're taking time, drinking beer and eating pizza, and it's very rewarding. And when you're all said and done and everything is finished up, you've got something you can be proud of.
Yeah. Jake mentions that a guy on Avance, I don't even know what that is, just found 200 milligrams of meth in his newly acquired car 6 months after he took delivery. 6 months later, he found it. 6 months.
that's an interesting situation, to be sure. I bought a pickup truck. I may have told this story. I bought a pickup truck just like Jake's friend, and I started taking the car apart. I took the bench seat out. I took the carpet was so torn, it was like peeling strips of torn carpet out. And underneath the back section of the truck, there was a rectangular hole cut and some screws set in. And I go, that doesn't look like factory. So I undid those screws to see what was underneath. And there was a metal tub that had been sort of shoved in there, and a yellow envelope wrapped up with the rubber bands on it. I opened it up, $2,500 in cash.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I bought this truck. It was years, I think maybe a year, 2 years after I bought it, that I finally got around to doing this. And I called the owner. The phone number that long gone. So I wasn't able to get in touch with the person, but I immediately made $2,500 on that.
Hey, you tried. And that brings me to what Ray's been talking about in the comments. I would go out, the online auctions, every auction's online right now, but I met Ray at the CarMax auction, and we'd stand in line and we'd watch these cars go over the block, and some piece of crap that's, $500 car will go for $3,000. And we'll be like, what is it? $2,500 in the glove compartment?
In the glove compartment.
Like, it's going to need that to be worth $3,000. Yep. But he is saying that, the prices at the auctions right now are just horrible. Cars are going for 3 and 5 times the MMR, which is the Manheim Market Report. He wants help. He doesn't know how to get help. Help me, Raffi. Help me, Dan. I don't know how to help you on that, other than Ray. Maybe to start advertising that you'll buy cars, or hang out at CarMax when people are driving their car in to get an appraisal, and just say, I'll offer 100 more than CarMax is paying you. I mean, there are companies that do that.
You got to get creative, because the supply is very different now, and there's all sorts of strange reasons why. But regardless of projecting what might be the case, start looking in non-common places and start making offers on cars that you see that you can resell, and just pay wholesale, or as close to wholesale as you can, buying at retail. Lots of people need the money and have to sell their car. It's not their primary vehicle. They have a second car. It's a good way to go. There are cars that are for sale on Craigslist. They're pinned up in the local market. A car for sale. Go to the local mechanics and like Dan said, put a thing up. Buying your car. Tired of continuing to pay maintenance on your car? We'll buy it and give you fair market value. And put the little tear off slips or QR code or whatever it is you want to do, so you can be people can get in touch with you and start buying cars. The auctions are a good place to get cars, but the competition at the auctions now is greater than it's ever been. And that's what's driving prices up. It's not that the value of cars has all of a sudden increased. It's that the buyers at auctions have started becoming more competitive, and they're willing to pay more.
Now, Dan in the comments says the junker trade-in thing, which was cash for clunkers years ago, took a lot of them off the market. That is true. However, that was in 2009. That's how long ago that was, believe it or not. Cash for clunkers, because we launched cashforcars.com, a company that I had co-founded right around that same time. So it was a perfect storm. Now, what Cash for Clunkers is they wanted to get cars off the market that were getting horrible gas mileage and were big polluters. So if you bought a car that got 10 miles per gallon better than the car you're trading in, you got like $3,500. If you traded in a car that got 15 miles per gallon better, I don't remember the exact number, you got $4,500. The car didn't even have to run. The only caveat was you had to have been registered owner for a period of time. It was 6 months or a year. So people weren't just going out buying junk cars and taking the dealers, and the dealers were getting the $4,500 cash. And there were car deals where you could get a PT Cruiser that had a factory rebate, and you could end up paying, like, I think we figured out $3,000 for a brand new PT Cruiser in 2009 if you had a Ford Explorer. And they would kill the car. It took about 600,000 or 700,000 cars off the road, which is not a huge number, but it did create the cash for cars industry and people buying cars online. And right now what's happening is you've got Carvana and Vroom and Shift, where they're all trying to buy cars, and they put up, we'll buy any car. And CarMax is doing it online now. And there is every dealer needs cars. If they've got to sell 30 cars a month just to make their monthly nut, as they call it, to pay their bills, well, you better be able to get 60 cars a month, because you have to have a stock to be able to sell those cars.
Well, and don't forget that this past year has built up a tremendous amount of equity in the value of the automobile. So young people that had typically been exhibiting a complete lack of interest in an automobile, now they want a car to get the hell out of parents' house. And, after living for a year confined, the automobile is the ideal way to safely get away from your parents. And that's always been the case. It's just that in the past, you could escape. You could go binge watch The Office, or you could lose yourself on YouTube for a couple hours, or play video games. But even the most screen addicted kids, after a year of using that as your safety, you got to get out. You got to do something. You're just, and that's, I think a lot of people are buying cars just to get away from their new normal.
Yeah. And so, Ray does say we gave him a good idea. Sidewalks are public property, so hire people to hold signs that say, "Get your price at CarMax, then call me." And it'll be flushed with cars again. There are in some markets, I saw it in California. I haven't seen it here yet, but there are markets where people will set up, a little car lot across the street or as close to a CarMax as possible, with a huge sign, "Bring us your CarMax appraisal, $200 over or $100 over, guaranteed." Yeah. So people would go into CarMax, get the appraisal, spend the hour it takes or whatever to do the appraisal, and they drive over, hand them the appraisal, and make the $200. Now, if I work for CarMax and I realized somebody was doing this, I of course would, jack the appraisals up, but then you're stuck because you have to pay that as well. And the prices of CarMax, I'm convinced that they're not adjusting, even though dealers are paying crazy high money for cars right now at CarMax. I'm not convinced that they are giving the public the same value. I think they're still going by Kelley Blue Book, and they're still going by MMR, NADA, and they're basing it on that price, not what they're selling for at their own auctions, because their cars going insane prices. And Ray and I text each other during the car sometimes, during the auction sometimes. And there's been cars, there was a 99 Toyota Sienna minivan that a guy, I think, paid $11,000 for, or something like that. Yeah. A 99. I mean, there's nothing special about it. He had it on his site forever for $14,999. We just kind of follow them. We see who bought it because it shows what dealer bought it. Then we go watch their site and we see it sitting there for 3 years.
Yeah. Look,
some of it just makes no sense.
All over the United States, there's opportunities. When I get a call from a friend that is in Northern California and they say, "I'm looking for a car," or "I'm looking to sell my car and get another car," the first thing out of my mouth is, this Saturday, just like every Saturday, get in your car and go drive to the San Ramon Valley High School in Danville, California. Every weekend, there's anywhere from 40 to 60 cars parked out in front of the high school, up and down the main street, and they're all for sale. And I have bought cars and sold cars at that location. I literally sold one of my cars that day and bought another car that same day. So I drove my car there and waited in a lounge chair out in front of my car, sold it, took the money, and walked up and down until I found another car and ended up driving that one home. There are people that in affluent communities, there's always places where people are selling cars, and there's always little hangout-like zones where cars just happen to appear that are grouped together for sale. And that's also a great way to find a car for sale. And again, people are, they get their car out there on Saturday. I see cars there for $7,500, and then come Sunday, lined marked through $6,250. Help me, must sell today.
The biggest mistake you can possibly make is buying the car first before you sell your car, because now you have two cars to get home somehow. So
Yeah.
always sell yours first and then go shopping.
Yeah.
Do not buy your car and then go shopping and then go try to sell yours, because you end up either selling your car for a huge loss just to get rid of it so you don't have to get it home, or you'll sell your car for exactly what you paid for the other car, so you're even, and you might leave a lot of money on the table.
Someday we'll do a section on this show about car auctions, because I did a study some years ago on setting up your own car auctions, and believe it or not, there's very little regulation in setting up your own put up the circus tent type car auction. You don't even have to be a licensed auctioneer.
In Washington, you do.
All you need is to be a dealer. You need to be a dealer or have a dealer associated with it. But the auction process, the management of it, the whole effect of it, the advertising, promotion, it's just like throwing a carnival at your school. The only difference is you have to make sure that you have a licensed dealer associated with the auction process. Right. So, or
if you're going to have an auctioneer with a fast, that guy has to be a licensed auctioneer. But yeah, as an auction to run the auction, you could bring an auctioneer in to run an auction for you.
But Ray, you could put an ad in the paper, or you could get news out. They say we're now taking consignments for auction, and the cars that come in, you may not auction them. You may just buy them yourself. That's one of the things that a lot of auction houses do. Cars come in, they look at the car, they say, look, this is a $25,000 car. This guy wants to reserve it for $15,000, and why don't we just buy it? We'll buy it from him now. We'll give him his 15, and then we'll sell it. We'll auction it and take the money for ourselves. Lots of auction companies do that, and auction houses make tremendous amount of money, 8% on the consignment from the seller and 10% on purchase from the buyer. That's a lot of money. So
yeah, they make it on both sides.
Yeah, they do.
Sure. Ray does have a car he really wants you to buy. Or he wants your help with.
All right.
I'll bring up the picture of it real quick here.
Okay.
There you go. Because he knows how much you love these.
Oh yes, the Volkswagen Beetle, the new Beetle.
That is the new Beetle. It's a 2006. It's blue. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's sitting at auction. It's stalled right now at $800 at the Stokes auction in Port Orchard.
These used to be darlings in the auction car resale world. People bought them all the time. But I think people are over them. They're getting old. The majority of them are now 20-year-old cars. And when you see them driving around, they're still cute and round, but the cute and roundness of it is now outdated. So I think a lot of people kind of shy away from them for a number of different reasons, though they are decent cars, and they run well, and they'll stay on top of everything. But gosh, $800. That's good. You could make some money on that.
No, that's what the high bid is. He's selling it. He needs to get $2,000 out of it. It's stuck at 800. Nobody's bidding on it. Now, I would think, Ray, if you just advertise that for, $2,500 out the door, tax, license, and everything. But if it's got some issues, then obviously you've got some other ones. Now, Dan in the comments also says local towing companies hold auctions for cars when owners don't pay the fee to recover. This is a very good. By the way, that one's a 2006, the one that he was showing. So that one's only about 15 years old. This is a very good way to get cars. And I would see a lot of, when I worked for Copart Auto Auctions, I had a lot of dealers that would buy cars this way, and they wouldn't have a title because you're buying a car, car gets towed, it's parked illegally somewhere, it comes to the tow yard, it sits there in impound, the people never come get it. They're charging $75 a day or whatever it ends up costing. At the end of a month, they owe more money than the car's worth. So they go, I don't even want the car. Just keep it. Well, the tow yard then has an auction, and they sell off these cars that to the highest bidder. this is a way to get some cars. There's a little extra paperwork involved sometimes because there is no title. You might have to get a bonded title, and you might have to track down the original owner to see if you can find a title. There might be damage. You don't know what's wrong with the car. There's no guarantees. There's no arbitration. The car is what it is. But Ray, that's something you might want to look at as a way to find a car here and there. Go ahead.
Yeah, both Dans make a good point. In 1987, I believe, I had sold my Mustang, my 69 Boss 302. I had sold it to a guy, and he never transferred it into his name. And somehow the car was parked somewhere and got towed, and it wound up in some tow salvage place like Dan is talking about. And just as a courtesy, they called me because I was the last known owner of the vehicle. They called me and they said, hey, just, heads up, your car is going to go to auction and it's going to sell for nothing. Come pay the fees and get this thing out of here. It's a great looking car. And I went, it's not my car. I sold it. I sold it like a year ago. And I said, well,
it's yours.
It's yours. Show up with, I think it was $1,345. And this car is yours again. So I showed up there, $1,345 cash. And just across the street was a locksmith that made keys. And they made a key for the car and started it up. I bought the car back. And, like Dan said, back to the DMV, paperwork, all that stuff, so you get duplicate pink and all that. And I sold the car again.
Yeah. Sometimes you get the cars that are also repairs. Somebody brings the car into the shop. It needs a transmission. So the place puts in a brand new transmission. $3,000 later, the customer never shows up again. They never hear from him again. Well, that's a great car to buy at an auction because that it runs because they just fixed the transmission. It's got keys because they left the keys with them. It'll have a lien on it from that mechanic that you have to satisfy. Usually, they want the whole $3,000 or whatever the amount is. But there's another way to get some interesting cars. Now, when you go to resell these cars, the Carfax, the auto check is going to have some weird stuff on it because it's going to show it was, potentially repoed or auto salvage auction potentially if it ended up going to Copart or IA for those reasons. You never know. But, if you're looking just for a personal car even, or a project car, the local tow auctions, there are, and I'm glad Dan mentioned it. I totally forgot about those. And because when I was flipping cars for Copart, I would go to some of those. Although one of them was a little shady. Let me tell this story real quick. So I showed up to buy some cars at this auction, and it was one of the companies that we used at the auction when cars had been sitting too long at the auction. Like a dealer dropped a car off or a private party wanted to sell their car. It didn't sell. They never came to pick it up. We kept calling them. They disappeared. Numbers disconnected. After X amount of days, we would just impound it and we'd send it to this tow yard. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go buy some of those and we'll sell them. And I showed up, and the owner of this company called the general manager of the auction, and then I get a call. Yeah, you got to go. I go, what? He goes, you can't buy into those cars. I go, really? He goes, yeah, you got to go. Because I'm looking around like there's nobody here. So I was the only one there. I would have won every car for like $100. And the problem was
that's the auction Ray needs to go to.
Yeah, and the problem was this place had their auction, but they never really had the auction. They bought all the cars themselves. And they put a number on it that was kind of realistic. And then they were a scrapyard as well. So they had the incentive. They would every one of these cars that came from us would just stay there, and they would buy them from themselves. And they were like, you can't be here. I'm like, wow, shady.
Well, one thing you mentioned, Dan, that I think is important, you talk about Carfax and salvage title, branded title, bonded title, all these things, title history, repossession. Look, the fact is, it's not that unusual these days to have a car that's going to have some kind of mark on its history. The key is to just be honest about it. Is to say what it is. This car was damaged. It was repaired, properly repaired. Here's the receipts that show the proper repair. That is why it has a salvage title. It's still a very good car. Still has plenty of miles left in it. Yes, this car was stolen. It was a theft recovery. That's what's on the title. It's not a big deal. The car was completely cleaned, and we should have another show. We should talk about theft recovery. A family friend lost his car. It was stolen. The police recovered it. And then he said, now, what do I do? And I said, well, the first thing you want to do is open the door, throw in a flea bomb, close the door, and let it off, because you got to really, really clean, pay the money to get it professionally detailed, because you don't know if you have allergies, if somebody's put a dog in the car, if they've been smoking in the car. There's all kinds of things. It's the interior of the car that needs to be properly tended to if it's been stolen.
Yes.
So,
and a lot of times people can buy their own car back after it's been stolen.
Yeah.
And it depends on how long it is. Like if the insurance company has already titled it in their own name, they may not let you buy your car back. And you may have to go find the auction it goes to and then buy it back. So now your one owner car is now a 3-owner car because it's you, the insurance company, and then you.
And these things can be explained. A friend of mine has a car that, he put personalized license plates on it 4 different times. He owned the car for 26 years. Well, there's 4 different change of ownerships while he's owned it on the Carfax. So you have to explain that stuff. Yes.
Now, Ray mentioned this, and then before we have to get to old school right after this, but he forgot someone passed away and his entire estate's going to be sold at the Stokes auction next month. Brian, the auctioneer, said it will include a bunch of collector Corvettes. Are you listening, Jake? I see them all getting loaded in the back lot. If Raffi want to collect Corvettes, watch next month. Jake.
There you go. And listen, stuff out of estates is a great way to go. Estate purchases. I've made several estate auction purchases. And that'll be our segue into the classic section of Old School.
Well, here we go.
All right, let's go old school. Now, typically for old school, we look at sports cars, we look at fun cars, we look at cars that are different and cars that have a different edge. But this one is going to be familiar to pretty much everyone. And that is the first edition compact SUV, the Ford Bronco. Now, the Bronco was a very, very innovative idea for Ford Motor Company, but it had been around in a sort of different way. We'd seen Jeeps, we'd seen International Harvester vehicles, we'd seen Toyota Land Cruisers, and all sorts of different types of cars. But when Ford built the Bronco, they offered it in 1965 or released it in 65, and 1966 was the first year of the Bronco. And that first series would go on into the 70s as a compact SUV. So compact being small, short wheelbase. I think 92 inches was the wheelbase on the Bronco. And you could get 2 people inside the Bronco comfortably, and you could put a couple small people in that smaller backseat area or smaller zone in the back, so to speak. And you'd have a lot of fun in a Bronco. They had removable hardtops that would come off. You could get soft tops that would cover them. These were cars that were not only a lot of fun to drive, they came with durable 6-cylinder engines, would offer great fuel economy, or powerful 289 and later 302 V8 engines. Super easy to work on, very, very basic. You can even get conversion kits so that you can install power brakes on the cars, because most of them were outfitted with manual brakes. But they made literally hundreds of thousands of these Broncos. Fun features, you could get the outside hinged doors, so you could remove the doors and drive the car without doors. You could remove the entire top mechanism all the way down. You could hinge the windshield forward, just as the photo was showing here. Not only were they a lot of fun, they were inexpensive, and they remained inexpensive for a long time. Now, in recent years, Ford Broncos, especially the early first series cars, have gone up in value quite a bit. So you're going to have to pay a little bit more to get a Bronco from the first series, but that's okay, because they offer a lot of charm, character, and durability. Very, very easy to maintain. Get one that's either original or has only had a few owners. You'll probably pay $10,000 to $15,000 for a decent one that might need some work, and you'll pay upwards of $25,000 to $40,000 for a nicely restored or refinished or slightly modified version. Now, if you want to step into the second and third series Bronco, where they go into full, I guess it's full-size SUV category, The Bronco from the 80s and early 90s, great design, super clean, very, very easy to manage, easy to work on. You don't get into complex electronics in the Bronco until you get into the late 80s and early 90s. And that's okay, because even most of those modules can be easily removed and replaced. Lots of aftermarket support with the Bronco, big wheels and tires, lots of fun driving, both as a regular driving car. Dan's pulled up a mid-series full-size SUV Bronco. These are a lot of fun, a lot of support in the community, and something different and unique to drive on the roads, especially if you pick one that's from the first series. So the Ford Bronco.
The new Bronco that's come out is also available. There's also the very famous Bronco, of course. We know this one.
Yes, the white Bronco. This was Al Cowling's car, I believe.
Yes, Al Cowling had his, but OJ and Al had the exact same cars, which I thought was weird that two guys would have white cars with the tan interior or the black interior, whatever they had.
Well, and the reason they were the exact same car, it's so that they could cover each other being places that the other didn't want to necessarily know they were.
So, that wasn't there. That was Al. Yeah, that was Al.
Yeah, exactly. No, that wasn't me. That's Al. No, that was an OJ. Yes, a very famous Bronco for tragic reasons that are still sad today. But the new Bronco, which is also, I think, out this year.
It's out now. I've seen a bunch of them, actually.
Yeah, there's actually a very good value, very striking design. A lot of interest and marketing hype is going into the Bronco as it comes back into the market, which is only going to make the original Broncos even more valuable. And again, the Ford Bronco, most of the internal components on the early series Broncos, it's Mustang. So all of it is Falcon based, Ford Falcon being the base for the Mustang and for the Bronco. Easy to work on, very basic. Carburetor doesn't work, take the carburetor off, put an Edelbrock 500 CFM on top, and literally out of the box, pre-adjusted, pre-ready to go. And that's a $250 replacement. Boom, and it's done. Your fuel doesn't work? Oh, it's one of these lines. There's only one fuel line. Replace that fuel line, put in a new one, you're off and ready to go. Gas tank not functioning properly, looks like it might be rusted, drop it out, take it over to Renew. Renew will completely recondition it for $200. Back it goes underneath the back of the car, hook it up, easy in, easy out, very, very basic mechanics. Even doing the brakes. If Dan L can do the brakes at age 12, you can do the brakes on a Bronco.
Now, what's funny is that when I saw the new Bronco the other day, I saw one driving through the parking lot when I was grabbing some Starbucks. When I was on the road a little bit there, and I saw this car, and I'm like, wow, it's so small. And now I understand that the original Bronco is what it's based on. I was, of course, in my brain, I'm like, oh, they're coming out with the Bronco. It's going to be the 80s, 90s big Bronco, because in the 80s, 90s, the small Bronco was the Bronco 2.
Yes.
Which really was based on the original Bronco. Yes. Whereas the Mustang 2 was a piece of crap.
And what I'm waiting for is the Pinto 2, which would even be smaller than the original Pinto. It's never going to come. As a designer, you're often thinking about the possibilities in the future. Boy, Ford really should reintroduce the Maverick, because the Maverick was a clever car. And that's been on my old school list. I got a whole list of old school stuff here, and check them off, cross them off to make sure I'm keeping track and I don't repeat an old school. But the Maverick was a great car. Again, Mustang based, simple, very, very basic mechanicals. So with the Bronco, if you like SUV and you like the idea of off-roading and you want something unique and different, and this is not going to be your everyday car, it could be a second car, but truth be told, you can actually daily a Bronco. It doesn't require any special care. And if you want to really modify it, you can get a 2.5 to 4-inch lift kit for it. You can put on big wheels and tires. Dick CPEC makes some all-terrain tires that are great on contemporary mags. You can dual shock your suspension if you want to do more rock crawling with the car. You can get lots of different companies. Corbeau makes some really nice seats for the Bronco, including the rear seat. which comes with seatbelt compatibility, that has suspension built into the seat. So that rough bucking ride, the bucking Bronco in the back, that actually is calmed a little bit by built-in seat suspension. And these aren't thousands of dollars of things. You can get complete seats, contemporary seats and seat belts, kitted in your car for about $1,200 to $1,400. And brake conversions can be done. Engine rebuilds are very basic. To rebuild a 302 V8 for your Bronco, it's not going to set you back that much money. If you did some of the work yourself, it might be parts, and some of your time might be $1,500 to $1,800. If you have it done out, it might be $3,500 to $5,000.
Now, you mentioned the Maverick, and I have news for you, Raffi.
Yes.
There's the new Ford Maverick. It's a pickup truck.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I did not realize that was a thing.
I did not either.
It says it's the Blue Oval's working on a unibody pickup that's smaller than the Ranger, and they're calling it the 2020 Maverick. And it's basically got the same underbody that will the same underbody from the same unibody, excuse me, that's from the Escape and the Bronco SUV. Because let's remember, Ford doesn't make cars anymore, really. I mean, they make the Mustang.
Right. The Mustang is an SUV,
and they have the electric Mustang, which is an SUV, but they have the Mustang car, and they have the Maverick is actually, the nameplate is coming back.
The Maverick is a truck. What is wrong with this world when the Maverick is a pickup truck? Well, okay.
And that was actually gonna be one of my topics today, was to talk about new cars coming out, because Hyundai has a pickup truck, their first pickup truck coming out.
Sure. Well, look,
called the Santa Cruz, I think.
Nobody has anything to do anymore. They're all staying home. So the one thing you need is a pickup truck to do all the work you're not doing. I don't personally understand the value in a pickup truck of this size, but Ford is very well known for taking advantage of market segments that they know are out there, and this could be the future of small. I mean, this used to be the mini pickup truck. Remember the mini pickups?
Yeah.
We'll save this topic for the next time. But boy, this is rich with all sorts of humor.
Yeah, the Hyundai Santa Cruz is what's coming out. That's their new pickup truck. It's a mini truck also. Yeah. And now Jake did correct me. I am seeing the Bronco Sport, the 4-door version. The 2-door Bronco is not out yet. Yes. But the Bronco Sport is like an Explorer. But the 2-door version, which is the new Bronco, those are still being made.
And Jake and I both have bronchitis. We know that. We love Broncos. So they're fun. They're a lot of fun. And again, very, very inexpensive, easy to work on. Ford Bronco.
Yes. And it's been an hour, so we're going to go.
All right.
Like that. Well, everybody, we want to thank you as usual to everybody that made comments today. Obviously, Jake always starts our day off with a good morning. Ray, Adam, Skippy Sprinkles popped in and said hello. Dan, of course, and all of Dan in the comments, not myself in the third person, and all of you that watched and didn't comment. If you're listening to the podcast, you can always go onto our Facebook page and say things. Ask questions, but watch us live every Saturday, 10 a.m. on the West Coast, which is 1 o'clock on the East. And that's the show. This has been Clutch Radio. I'm Dan.
And I'm Raffi.
And we're out of here. Bye.